bloody handprint on a mother's belly, a recurring dream with a naked child crawling on the road, and an accident happening exactly where they once fled from their own conscience. Welcome back to Whisper Horror Channel, where every life has a price to pay. If you're watching part 2, don't forget to leave a comment and share your feelings about what Emma is going through. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet, go back now, because this debt doesn't begin with death, but with abandonment. Ryan rushed out of the house, rain lashed at his face, each step heavy as if dragging him into the cold earth. The scene was submerged in a flashing sea of police and ambulance lights. He identified his wife through the black nylon of a body bag. Emma's face was unusually serene, the silver necklace he had given her still loosely wrapped around her neck like a final smile that hadn't quite faded. Ryan collapsed beside his wife, his wail echoing into the rain. What about my child?" the doctor said. It. His voice broke, shattered amidst the thunder and the water streaking across the road. The young police officer shook his head, looking away. "I'm sorry, sir. The fetus was too small. Nothing left." A searing pain pierced Ryan's chest, paralyzing all sensation. He clutched the body bag amidst the crowd, amidst the rain and the flickering lights, knowing that karma had closed its cycle. There was no redemption left, nothing to mend. Wind and rain swept through his hair and clothes, bringing into his heart the bitter taste of ultimate failure and loss. In that final moment, he heard a woman's voice whispering from somewhere in the wind, "I was once a mother, now it's your turn." Then silence. Only the sound of rain remained, mud traces, and a cold empty space piercing through the sky. At the very edge of loneliness, Ryan understood. All human morality, all justification failed before the cost of an irreversible action. The child was never born, the wife never returned. The shadow of the tormented soul and guilt forever lingered at the edge of memory, hauntingly silent, unreachable by light, like an unending loop in a rain that never stopped. That night, the air felt as if a thick layer of silent mist covered his mind and the house. After identifying his wife's body, Ryan was left with only his rain-soaked clothes and the chilling bag pressed against his chest. The lingering sound of ambulance sirens mixed with rain in his ears, like the shattering of his own soul. The apartment seemed larger, denser with Emma's absence. The kitchen corner, the torn pillowcase, her unfinished maternity jacket still faintly carrying the scent of her perfume. The following days transformed into a suffocating series of shadows. Ryan quietly made funeral arrangements. No relatives or friends were strong enough to console this unimaginable loss. He sat for hours by his wife's grave, clutching the ultrasound printout, its ink still fresh, the image of a faint dot, a soul never named, dragged down with its mother into the cold earth. Every night, Ryan turned on the TV just to ward off the surrounding emptiness. But no matter the channel, sometimes the static screen would show the image of a mangled car in the rain, the old pain repeating like an endless punishment. He often dreamed in that dream, Emma turned back from afar, her pregnant belly holding both light and shadow, saying nothing but quietly placing her hand on her heart, beside her the shadow of a child just born and yet never existed. On rainy nights, wind howled through the window. Ryan vaguely heard a child crying, faint at first, then forming a mournful chord echoing throughout the house. He woke up, fumbling in the dark, calling Emma's name, calling the child he would never have the chance to hold. Sometimes he would stand silently for a long time in front of the mirror in the foyer, staring into his own eyes, seeing behind him the faint shadow of a long-haired woman, her lips silently mouthing incomplete words between reality and illusion. Day by day, the man gradually drifted away from all social connections. He became sullen, avoided friends, refused all sharing, letting the world outside turn on without him. In Ryan's heart, only 2 regrets remained: why he hadn't stopped the car that night, and why Emma had died on a rainy day, at the very spot where he had once abandoned another life. The house, after Emma's death, became an echo chamber devoid of warmth. Leftover food in the refrigerator still bore Emma's neatly written labels: "Don't eat too much sugar, it's bad for the baby." Those words were sharp cuts each time Ryan opened the fridge, each fruit yogurt Emma had personally chosen, each half-empty box of cereal. Even on the refrigerator door, the first ultrasound picture was still taped, the image of a tiny life next to the ink. Hello world. At night, Ryan sat in the darkened kitchen, everything covered in a chilling hue. The clinking of a spoon against a glass suddenly echoed, each beat distinct, as if someone was stirring milk for a child at the counter. He walked over. The space was empty, the glass still dry on the shelf, but the feeling of someone having just brushed past him, leaving a persistent tremor, remained. In the bathroom, the old ultrasound machine haphazardly placed under the sink suddenly emitted a fetal heartbeat, groaning amidst the dripping water, rapid beats that pierced Ryan's heart with wrenching pain. Every object, every detail that had once been a premonition of happiness, now became a festering wound, endlessly oozing the blood of memory. He couldn't sleep. Each time he drifted off, he immediately plunged into a nightmare of Emma's body lying cold on the road, rainwater washing around her, her maternity coat soaked, her matted hair covering her half-closed eyes. Some nights, Ryan saw himself as the victim, lying motionless on the road, behind the steering wheel, the shadow of a pregnant woman staring at him with a look of both pity and reproach. He woke with a start, sweat pouring, realizing he was sitting in the kitchen, a fruit knife clenched in his hand, his feet icy cold with water. He couldn't remember when he had automatically walked down. All boundaries between dream and reality began to blur. The house increasingly showed signs not meant for the living. In the late hours of the night, Ryan began to hear the tiny shrill cries of an infant echoing from the corner of the bedroom. In the morning, he discovered tiny milk footprints leading from the bedside to the dining table, faintly visible in white on the wooden floor, then vanishing as he touched them. The old high chair would rock gently even without wind. Once, Ryan stood motionless watching it, when the chair suddenly spun towards him, emitting a faint plastic squeak. He called out softly, his voice hoarse as if pleading, "Is it you, son?" All the lights in the house suddenly went out, darkness echoing a sense of overwhelming dread. The string pulled tight in his chest felt as if it had snapped. Things didn't stop there. At exactly 3 a.m., the living room TV automatically turned on, the screen initially flickering, then immediately switching to a late-night report about last year's accident. Not only Emma's name but the pregnant woman's face gradually appeared, but her eyes were round and black like burnt charcoal, staring directly through countless layers of glass into Ryan's eyes. He trembled, reaching for the remote, but the screen remained fixed until his phone vibrated. The screen showed a message. "Do you think my child will forgive you?" No number, no contact, impossible to delete. The message immediately filled the screen again, each time he tried to exit. The last warning came silently but cruelly. One afternoon, Ryan discovered a red crayon drawing on the living room table, a child's messy sketch. Two children standing side by side, one naked and red, one wearing a knitted cap like his child's old ultrasound image. Looking closely, there was a cross mark on each child's forehead, the circle still blurred from broken crayon. Ryan paused for a long time, his hand trembling, his pulse pounding wildly at his temple. He looked up, and in the hallway mirror, he saw himself holding a small child, the bones of his hand clearly visible through the blanket, yet he felt no warmth. But when he turned around, his hands were empty. The room held only the heavy sound of wind pressing against the solid darkness. From then on, Ryan could no longer distinguish between real and unreal, living and dead, guilt and victim. The apartment became a prison of an invisible judgment, every object transforming into a call for past debts, every door opening into a labyrinth where unpacified souls patiently waited for him to stumble once more. His eyes became hollow and wild, each action a further cut into the crack in his sanity. At the edge of that madness, the shadows of two children, one Emma's, one the woman's from the road, had merged into a doppelganger, patiently guiding Ryan step by step into the final realm of punishment. Early winter froze the entire city. The air was bitingly cold, and the lead gray Nebraska streets, with their flickering Christmas lights, only highlighted the loneliness exposed in every window pane. In his apartment, Ryan sat before a cold fireplace, his hollow eyes facing scattered embers. His fingers traced the edge of a half-finished gift box, Kayla's childish scrawl, "Our family, Uncle Ryan, Aunt Emma, and a baby in a purple circle of light." Below each name was a small heart symbol, but in the child's position, there was only an empty circle with broken lines. Sarah had called Ryan many times throughout the week, but only received long, cold beeps. That morning, she brought Kayla right to the door, the mother and daughter crossing the thick snow to knock loudly on her brother's apartment door. The door was unlocked. Sarah walked in, the living room covered in a gloomy hue, everything still as it had been on the day Emma was lost. The fireplace cast only a faint light on Ryan's motionless figure. Kayla softly whispered, "Uncle Ryan, I drew this for you. Our whole family just like before. Mom said everyone will be happy again this year."
Ryan touched the paper, unable to hide his tears. His niece sat on his lap, her arms wrapped around him as if to soothe a pain she never fully understood. Amidst the breaking of his soul, Ryan nodded, agreeing to attend Christmas dinner with the family, as if grasping at a last fragile hope. That evening, Sarah's house blazed with lights, the smell of roasted turkey mingling with whiskey, waffles, and caramel. Christmas music filled the room. Everyone gathered, laughing and warding off the cold outside. Ryan sat at the table, a faint smile on his lips, his eyes touching each family member like an outsider. Sarah played Secret Santa. Kayla sang chirping. Mr. Carter stammered stories of old winters. When the whole family sang Silent Night together, their voices blending with the soft rain falling on the roof, Ryan suddenly shot up, clutching his head with both hands, covering his ears tightly. The music this time didn't soothe him, but rather felt like a drill compressing all pain towards his heart, pushing Ryan away from the dinner table, quietly retreating into the darkness outside the kitchen hallway. Sarah could only watch him go, her eyes red-rimmed, trying to hold on for a long time but unable to speak. That night, the atmosphere in Sarah's house suddenly changed. As Kayla drank milk on the sofa watching her uncle, the Christmas tree suddenly shook violently and toppled over, its top falling directly where Ryan had been sitting. Several photos hanging on the dining room wall were skewed, one large family photo torn diagonally, right across Ryan's face. As Sarah frantically cleaned up, Kayla unexpectedly tugged at her uncle's shirt. "Uncle, there's a baby standing behind you, but it has no skin." The decorative lights on the wall suddenly flickered, the bulb sequentially displaying the word "run." Everyone thought it was just a system error, but Ryan felt a chill down his spine, his hands clenching until they were white. The night ended, but the snow still hadn't stopped. Sarah told Ryan to stay the night. He drank a few more glasses of wine, then drifted off. When Sarah went into the room to get more blankets, she found a stack of old newspaper clippings on her brother's desk, cut from newspapers about last year's accident. Each photo was a snapshot of the Highway 21 crime scene, and on the back of one was Ryan's messy handwriting. "I killed, but no one knows." Sarah put the papers back, retreated, her heart filled with an undefined fear, but she didn't ask anything. The next day, watching her brother prepare to leave, her sister's eyes were no longer supportive but turned to doubt, utter disappointment. Christmas morning, Kayla handed her uncle a gingerbread man, but the heart was deliberately hollowed out. She tilted her head and whispered, "Last night, the baby told me you have no heart, so I made it right." Ryan dazedly dropped the gingerbread man onto the tiled floor. The dry sound of the cookie echoed in the house more loudly than usual, like the final breaking of a soul still in limbo. He turned to look at the crucifix on the wall, his eyes meeting the cold face of Christ. Then he recoiled, laughed to himself, a twisted laugh that turned into a mournful growl. No one said anything else. Christmas night passed, all prayers falling into emptiness, all police tightening their grip, yet no connection could save Ryan. When he left the door, no one held him back. His final footsteps fell into the gray winter evening, dissolving into the soft snow, only the faint flicker of multicolored lights receding behind his solitary back. All that remained for Ryan was the cold circle of guilt, of absolute isolation. All belief in forgiveness had died completely on a Christmas night no one dared to remember. Ryan woke up in the thick darkness, the clock on the wall casting faint numbers. 2:37 a.m. The dense silence drained the air from the cold house, each breath turning into a harsh white mist, carrying with it a solitude that buried itself deep into his bones. Suddenly, from somewhere behind the thick wall, a series of faint rhythmic taps echoed. The sound was like water droplets slowly falling onto a taut nerve, both slow and deliberately chilling. One beat, then another, not chaotic, but seemingly tearing the quiet into flickering, nameless fragments of consciousness. Ryan shot up, a cold shiver running down his spine. He listened. The taps grew clearer and clearer in that space, seeping into every crack of his confusion. Then, a soft lullaby began, neither far nor near, just faintly interwoven with darkness and memory. A woman's lullaby, a wavering rhythm, a woman's voice breaking through layers of pain. "Hush now, sleep tight, don't cry anymore. The blood is warm now." That distorted lullaby forced Ryan to cling tightly to the bed. A cool breath brushed his cheek. His hair stood on end. His spine stiffened to numbness. He pressed his ear against the cold, rough wall beside the bed. He only heard his own faint breathing in the room, while the lullaby ceased abruptly, as if cut off mid-song, a hollow feeling spreading like a cold sheet of water washing over his ribs. A cold yellow light streamed across the yard, entering through an open crack in the door, casting a glow on the stained gray wall where the bed leaned against. It was there that Ryan discovered a small, dried, bloody child's handprint, etched onto the scratched and cracked wall. The print was shriveled and dry, its dark reddish-brown color evoking a feeling that was both familiar and horrifying, like a forgotten memory that had never faded. Ryan recoiled, his heart heavy with an unnameable despair. The house, once his last refuge, had now squeezed him into a cold-blooded prison, woven from unpacified souls and unredeemed sins. And that night's lullaby, carrying the cold smell of blood and a haunting, painful rhythm, had become an indelible curse, signaling that in this place the dead would never be silent. The next morning was stiflingly gloomy. Ryan woke with a chest heavy as stone, his head vaguely dizzy, unsure if he had just woken from a nightmare or was reliving some dark day from the past. In the living room, everything remained as it had been when Emma vanished from his life. An old record lay casually on the shelf. A vase of dried flowers seemed to silently remind him of peaceful days long gone. At noon, Ryan felt nauseous, dry heaving periodically though he hadn't eaten anything. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, his face haggard, his eyes ringed with gray, his lips dry and white, his fingertips trembling as they clung to the edge of the sink. He coughed violently, then was startled to find blood on his hands, bright red streaks. Sweat poured down his back. Cold, staggering into the kitchen, Ryan realized that all the symptoms of illness in his body were converging without any clear explanation. Exhaustion, dizziness, stomach cramps twisting into knots. He reluctantly went to the clinic, listening as the doctor read out blood test results, checked his blood pressure, breathing rate, all nerve reflexes, but everything was normal. The doctor looked at him sternly. "You might have an autonomic nervous system disorder, or prolonged stress. You should take a break from work, or try talking to a therapist." Ryan nodded vaguely, his heart burning with irritation. As soon as he stepped out the door, he gritted his teeth and cursed, disgusted that no one in society understood what his internal wound truly was. Returning to the house, Ryan sat down on the floor, leaning against the section of wall where the small dried blood handprint had been the night before, shivering from the cold. As night fell, the space filled with a dizzying sensation of mild fever and delirium. Ryan stood silently before the bathroom mirror, splashed cold water on his face, then looked up. The image in the mirror suddenly split. On the outside was himself, hair soaked, collar disheveled, but in the mirror behind his shoulder clearly appeared the shadow of a long-haired woman, her face blurred and streaked as if melting in water. Ryan froze, his eyes fixed on the mirror. The figure didn't turn to face him. It stood rigidly behind him, but its hand tightly clutching his shoulder gradually became clear through the steam. From the corner of the eye of the figure in the mirror, blood dripped down her chin, then spread until the glass frame shattered, and the mournful, writhing cry of an infant echoed from an unreachable place. Ryan spun around. Behind him was empty. Outside the bathroom door, only the cold yellow light spread onto the carpet. But in his heart, a strange fear had taken root, the feeling that he himself was gradually being pushed away from reality, replaced by some other self, inhabited by the darkness and sounds of the dead. The next morning, Ryan suddenly discovered a handwritten letter on the bedroom table, old paper, ink hastily smeared. The choked words, his own unmistakable handwriting. "I'm sorry, don't forgive me, Mom. That child shouldn't have died. But it's here, in every breath I take." Each word, each letter, seemed to bleed, and as Ryan ran his hand over the writing, he felt a cold current passing through his body. He couldn't remember when he had written that letter. Fate played a cruel trick. When he tried to burn it on the gas stove, the paper only darkened but didn't burn, a cold metallic smell rising pungently, like old raw meat seeping from a dark corner of a gray cabinet. That evening, Ryan dreamed of himself curled up in the bathtub, water filling to his chest. The cold sensation clung to his skin. Then suddenly everything thickened. The water changed to liquid blood, swirling past his chin, his mouth full of a metallic taste. On the surface of the water floated the pale body of a child, its eyes wide open, its lips curved into a twisted smile. The child reached out its small hand, beckoning, its body trailing umbilical cord-like threads clinging to its chest. When Ryan woke up with a start, a deep bleeding gash appeared on his wrist, and words were etched in jagged dark red script. "Did you forget me, Father?" Everything ultimately remained only the coldness of a womb that would never give birth, a frozen space where death still awaited its name, where the shadows of unborn children and lost souls endlessly lulled him deeper into a labyrinth with no exit. Late afternoon, the Nebraska sky darkened to a heavy leaden gray, thick clouds seemingly swallowing the entire space around Ryan's lonely house. Rain fell silently, cold sheets of water lashing the eaves, the windows, the incessant drumming of rain reverberating through every wall, leaving no quiet space for the survivor's heart. Today, on that fateful day 1 year ago, Ryan's life took an irreversible turn. He stood on the doorstep, letting the cold wind lash his face, the smell of damp earth and rust permeating his every breath. Wind swirled dry leaves furiously across the yard, bare skeletal branches clattering against window panes, as if reiterating the gnawing pain that still squeezed his chest from the previous year. In the living room, the radio suddenly turned on, the announcer's voice distorted by static, as if echoing from another realm. This day last year, a serious accident occurred on Highway 21, resulting in the death of a pregnant woman. Today, authorities remind drivers to exercise extreme caution during heavy rain and limited visibility. He closed his eyes, feeling himself lost in an endless loop, as if destined to be pushed back to the exact starting point of all tragedies. Even after a year, every detail, every sound, every scent, all returned more fully than ever. In the thick, humid air, Ryan suddenly heard crying mixed with the sound of rain. The sound was faint, yet clear, the cry of an infant, weak yet visceral, echoing amidst the rumbling thunder, the sound of water slapping the porch, seeping into every nerve cell, as if rehooking him to that indelible day. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. The crying vanished, leaving only the endless lingering sound of rain. In that moment, Ryan knew he had fallen into a loop with no exit, literally, a shadow of fate. No matter where he went, no matter what changed, that blood-stained past would always drag him back, demanding he face it and pay the price. The rain returned, submerging memories, signaling that all cycles of karma had never closed. The sky darkened quickly, as if plunging the entire countryside into an old dream. Ryan sat awake by the window, gazing through the water-covered glass. The field in front of the house was bathed in a cold gray, wind lashing, making the Westwood sign vibrate with unsettling sounds. Rain pounded as if hitting his memories, pulling him back to that very night a year ago, when everything in his life began to rot. The living room light flickered, the cozy Christmas music on the radio interrupted by a warning. Tonight, heavy rain continues on Highway 21. Residents are advised not to drive outdoors, especially remembering the tragic accident on this very day 1 year ago. Ryan clutched his robe, pacing the house, each knock on the door, each gust of wind mixing with his increasingly erratic heartbeat. When he unconsciously stopped in the hallway, his phone vibrated. A message from Emma. "I'm on my way home. Got some pastries." Time displayed 6:40 p.m. Ryan frantically texted back, "Drive carefully. It's raining heavily." But the message not delivered notification silently flickered beneath his finger. Time passed heavily. 2 hours later, Ryan continuously called Emma's phone. The ringing sound was now just lost waves drifting in a sea of rain. Unease choked his chest. He contacted his wife's colleague. "Emma left early today. Around 5:30 she left the office." Emma's best friend confirmed, her voice worried. She texted she'd be home for dinner, said she'd buy pastries too. He turned on the security camera at the front door. He only saw his own image sitting on the porch in the rainy night, holding his phone, eyes looking out at the deserted street. Once, twice, then Ryan stepped out and opened the door, standing there waiting in vain for 20 minutes, his hair and shoulders soaked with rain, but behind him was a completely empty dark area, no one appearing after his footsteps. When the clock struck 10 p.m., Ryan trembled by the doorstep, everything around him merging into a long streak of white noise, rain, wind, his heartbeat in his chest, all seeping deep as if signaling once more. Last year's event was repeating. The vicious cycle was not easy to escape. His phone rang with an unknown call, the night shift police officer's hurried female voice. "Mr. Carter, we've just confirmed a serious accident on the North Highway. We need family to assist with identification." Ryan's hands turned icy cold, his mind paralyzed. A chilling pain shot through his entire body, from his bones to his chest. He put on his jacket, rushed to his car amidst the heavy rain. The drive to the scene was endless, streetlights glaring, illuminating every muddy streak, as if leading Ryan back to the starting point of all his original pain. The sight before him made him fall to his knees. Emma's car had crashed head-on into a tree by the roadside, exactly where he had hit the strange woman a year ago. Police had cordoned off the area, Emma's headlights still flickering desperately, all light-hungry equipment gleaming on the water-stained grass. No brake marks on the road. Nearby lay a broken pumpkin. Fresh mud and children's footprints splattered around the car like a demonic omen. Ryan tremblingly pressed himself against the body bag on the ambulance stretcher. Emma's eyes were closed, her mouth stained with a trace of blood. Around her neck still the old necklace they both shared. He burst into insane sobs, screaming with all his might. Why her? Why this place? This rainy night? No one answered but the distant ticking of a clock in someone's house, each tick chilling him to the bone. After the funeral, Ryan's apartment turned into a haunted land. All clocks stopped at exactly 6:47 p.m., the moment Emma sent her last message. The TV couldn't play any programs other than a silent black screen. The hallway lights flickered erratically, and the bathroom faucet dripped red drops like diluted blood. The wedding photos on the wall, torn in half by an unknown hand, only showed Emma standing alone, clutching her pregnant belly, behind her a brooding shadow seeming to devour her bit by bit. On the living room wall, a messy drawing in wet mud appeared after the rainy night. Like me, she couldn't move on either. Ryan felt his soul bleeding out in tears, in cold breaths. Everything he had ever loved, everything he had ever regretted, now just a frozen memory, unpitied, unsaved.
On the last night, when the outside world was completely silent, Ryan lay in bed, the blanket heavy with the dampness of late night. In the almost solid darkness, he vaguely heard a lullaby close by, no longer a stranger's voice but Emma's, very soft, very distant. Hush now, sleep tight. Don't cry anymore. The blood is warm now. He vaguely opened his eyes, realizing that on the bed beside him, his wife had returned, her back to him. Her hand was icy cold, clutching his hand in silence. His wife whispered, "Yes, I'm home, but our child needs to be born again. Are you ready?" In the curtain of rain and ultimate fear, from the edge of the bed, a tiny infant's hand slowly crawled up, bright red, its fingers reaching out to scratch his skin. The child smiled silently, its eyes strangely deep, a gaze that transcended all language of this world. A small kitchen, early morning light filtering through the misty window, warmth spreading with the smell of hot steaming food on the stove. Ryan walked down, feeling as if he was stepping into a moment both familiar and strange, where mournful memories still lingered, but were now sketched with bright warm colors. The clinking of knives and spoons against pots and pans resonated, blending with a gentle and somewhat tender sound. He stopped, his eyes fixed on the kitchen, where his wife, who had never returned, still stood, her figure soft with a clear pregnant belly. Emma turned, her smile gentle, her eyes dreamy but warm, softening his heart. "I know you're hungry. Do you remember our child?" The words were as light as a whisper, warming every fragment of Ryan's spirit, a feeling unnameable but seemingly the most real in the world. But when the lights flickered and blurred on the TV screen, news of last year's accident reappeared, like the cruel reality breaking the illusory picture. Ryan glanced back. The kitchen was empty, only a bowl of cold porridge on the table, and a grinning child's doll, its smile a defiant smirk, challenging fate. The initial warm atmosphere was now just a fluttering curtain of darkness, slowly suffocating him in the contrast between love and horror. At night, Ryan plunged deep into a nightmare. He felt himself locked in a small, suffocating delivery room. The fetal heartbeat echoed steadily, but interspersed with it was the incessant wailing of childbirth, the cry of a panicked infant not yet born. On the damp, moldy walls, lines of fresh blood flowed. "I haven't been born yet, so I cannot die." The mystery utterly bewildered him. The room became suffocating, the fetal heartbeat and crying echoing like an eternal judgment. In the following days, strange signs spread further. From the radio, the incessant drumming of a fetal heartbeat, papers falling from notebooks with faint ultrasound images. On the bathroom wall, drawn in pale red mud, a detailed diagram of a uterus with a blocked exit. A sense of despair permeated the place, as if a life that never had a chance to be born was trapped in an endless loop. In the middle of the night, children's cries echoed ceaselessly, from a baby crib gently rocking in the bedroom to a pillow sinking as if someone lay beside it. Musical toys spontaneously played distorted lullabies, even though they weren't plugged in. Light bulbs flickered out of sync in the darkness. The bedroom door swung open, and Ryan saw the dimly lit crib moving into the backyard. When he approached, it vanished, leaving only a muddy cocoon-like pregnancy hanging suspended in the rain. He could no longer distinguish between dream and reality. Everything felt like a metaphor, not a child ghost, but the suppressed consciousness of someone who never had a chance to be born, clinging tightly to his soul. In despair, searching for a light at the end of the tunnel, Ryan went to the old church where the priest had performed Emma's funeral. He hesitantly expressed his wish to hold a baptism for the unborn child, even though he knew it was only a dark, unrecognized spirit. The stern-faced priest initially agreed, but the night before the ceremony, he was nowhere to be found. In the chapel, muddy child footprints covered the altar, strange shapes forming a demonic circle around the crucifix. On the crucifix, a dried, blood-stained image of a placenta threateningly captivated the living mind. No one answered Ryan's prayer. A soul without a name could not be saved, and the ritual system could not resolve a denied death. The nightmare in Ryan's heart didn't stop as a shrill cry echoed in the darkness. "Daddy, did you forget me?" Ryan's house transformed into a delivery room, the cold smell of disinfectant, white lights shining on blood-stained walls. From the darkness, a pale-skinned child, eyes without pupils, was born, crawling towards him. In that room, his dead wife stood behind him, clutching her empty belly, smiling fantastically. "Name our child. It needs a name to be born, or to drag you down." Ryan collapsed onto the cold floor, clutching the small doll still soaked with blood, whispering the child's name, the one who would bind him forever in an endless nightmare. The lights flickered out, the fetal heartbeat, the lullaby, the crying merged into darkness, closing all exits. The room door closed, the space dim, the karmic cycle completed. No one was born, no one truly died, only the restlessness of unrecognized souls forever haunting the house, haunting Ryan, and devouring all last attempts at redemption. Ryan pushed open the old basement door, stepping into the dim light of a chillingly damp day. Thick dust covered the concrete floor, his every step echoing hauntingly, clinging to the vast yet suffocating air. A thick, musty smell, like layers of mist covering memories, dragged him deeper into a sense of unease and self-doubt about reality itself. Ryan's hand suddenly hit something icy cold, a wooden door, faded by time, so old it seemed to have vanished, if instinct hadn't led him to it. His eyes widened, mixed with surprise and fear, as he realized that right here, in his own house, existed a secret he had never touched for years. Taking a deep breath, he cautiously touched the doorknob. A cold sensation ran down his spine. The door let out a groaning creak, its echo lingering like a warning from another world. Peace slipped away from Ryan, replaced by darkness and confusion. It seemed that this place didn't obey the laws of the living world, but was a gateway to a reverse layer of reality. As he descended each step of the staircase, Ryan felt himself sliding deeper into an unnameable, silent abyss. The flashlight in his hand flickered, its light continuously swallowed by the space, each step leaving thick darkness behind him. The cold gradually seeped from his feet up to his neck, his own footsteps echoing back like a reminder. "You are alone." The basement space appeared, horrifyingly familiar yet different. Everything, from tables and chairs to windows, was arranged exactly like the house above, but all were distorted, darkened, and twisted, reflecting a memory that had once been broken. Ryan slowly entered the kitchen, his trembling palm brushing across the cold, moss-covered countertop. On the wall hung a family portrait of three, but the central position, where his wife had once radiated happiness, was now just a stained void, like a cosmic black hole. Ultrasound images were inverted, every face in wedding photos blurred, faded by an unseen flow of water. On the counter, randomly placed, were a few objects Ryan had almost forgotten existed: a pair of never-worn baby shoes, an unfinished parenting book, a piece of plastic from Emma's maternity lock, every detail shimmering then silently dissolving like water bubbles. He stood still, feeling a ghostly current swirling around him, binding fragmented versions, incomplete memories, as if tied to a boundary line between not living and not dying. The basement shadows exhaled a mournful rhythm of oblivion, layering upon layer into thousands of nameless walls. Ryan sank deeper, torn from reality by an invisible pull of memory, versions forced to exist outside the light, in the storage area of rejected souls, a place that only opened at the moment the living person was no longer themselves, only awaiting for the next karmic retribution. The growing unease became a cramping pain in his chest. Ryan realized This basement was not just a physical space, but the embodiment of the dark side of all tragedy, where the world of the living refused to face death, and also where souls could not enter reincarnation. The telephone rang shrilly in the dense darkness of the basement. Ryan startled, his trembling hand reaching for the flickering screen, looking at the numbers that appeared, not saved, but each prolonged ring seemed to dissolve into his spine, making his palms break out in cold sweat. He answered, and from the other end echoed a voice once associated with childhood and a peace forever lost, his mother's voice, soft and distant. "Why are you still there at this hour?" His ragged breathing lengthened. A sharp pain rose to his chest. Ryan could only choke out, Mom, why are you calling? You will..." The voice on the other end replied softly like mist, "Get out of there, son. This house is not for the living." A chill struck him to the bone. Ryan ran upstairs, threw open the door, and rushed out as if fleeing from himself. The street was silent, not a soul in sight. Neighboring houses, once familiar through afternoon parties, were now deserted, windows dark, not a single light on. The trees lining the road stood motionless as if frozen against the inky sky. Not a leaf stirred, not a sound. Nothing here belonged to reality anymore. He vaguely looked around, his wristwatch flickering between two time frames, 2:03 a.m. and the words 13 weeks, 4 days. Ryan felt torn between two layers of time, the memory of a father who never made it to the delivery room, and the reality of a man lost in endless internal darkness. Walking on and on, at the end of the street, the familiar hearse appeared. He froze. In the car reflected through the window, he himself was sitting in the back seat, clutching a large pregnant belly, his eyes dazed, lifeless. He tried to step forward, but his feet were stuck to the cold asphalt. Beneath his feet was a winding trail of mud, familiar like the footprint of the unborn child that always clung to his lost dreams. A faint car horn echoed, and the stage of reality veered off course. Ryan dazedly realized all external connections had been choked off, the doors to society, life, repentance, all closed. Only a dense layer of space remained, binding him in a limbo state between boundaries, belonging to neither side anymore. The question echoed from deep in his heart. Had he died before, only a part of his memory, a part of his regret lingering in this realm? Or had Ryan himself never found a way out of death on that rainy night a year ago? Ryan fumbled through the cold hallway of the basement, his hand touching the rough walls covered in scratches, dried blood, and old mud. Every few steps, he encountered a closed door, and from behind each door echoed faint sounds, mournful sighs, the sobbing of a forgotten child, the choked cries of a mother, the helpless groans of old men dissolving in despair. Ryan pushed open the first door. Inside, a thin, gray-skinned girl, eyes deeply sunken, her legs wrapped in yellowed bandages. She held a tattered teddy bear, looked directly at him and whispered in a voice not of this world, "I have no name. I wasn't written in the book." The second door swung open. The room was bathed in a hazy white. In the middle of the floor, a bleeding pregnant young woman, her face lifeless, her hands clutching the spot that haunted her dreams of her child. Her eyes followed Ryan, deep as a deadly abyss. "I was born on the line between life and death, but no one waited for me on the other side." Then in the distance, a piercing wail echoed from the last room, a man dragging an urn of ashes, his hair white, sitting hunched beside an altar covered in faint, unburning incense smoke. "I remain, because no one has called my name." Each soul looked at Ryan with faces mixed with regret and reproach. "You have no name in the book, but you are on the wrong side." At the end of the hallway, on a low altar, Ryan encountered the image that had haunted him for months. A birth certificate, unfilled, above it a water-stained ultrasound image, the name on the child's name section crossed out, below it only written, "Unacknowledged." The entire basement seemed to transform into a space of wandering souls, abandoned between layers of reality, not allowed to move on, but also with nowhere to stop. Ryan stood motionless, realizing that he himself and the child who had never been named were floating between truth and illusion, both sinner and victim of an unending karmic cycle. Deeper into the darkness, Ryan stepped into a room bathed in a faint, blood-red light. In the middle of the room were 3 wax masks, each a representation of Emma's face through different stages of pregnancy, the gentle anticipation of the early months, the tired worry of the middle months, and the sad, resigned chaos as the delivery day approached. The room was so cold that even his breath became visible vapor. The child's spirit appeared, tiny and eyeless, its mouth moving with a language that only existed in the basement. "Choose a face for mommy, then I will call you daddy."
Ryan trembled, picking up the saddest mask. At that very moment, the door slammed shut. The fetal heartbeat echoed violently like a death drum beating to the rhythm of death. The walls gradually bulged with rows of infant masks. Blood stained each wide-open mouth, whispering, "Daddy, where are you?" The air grew thick. Memory and reality spun. Ryan dizzyingly realizing he no longer knew who he was, a father, a murderer, or just a soul waiting to be born on the denied threshold of life. The room twisted into absolute darkness, only the fetal heartbeat reverberating in delirium. Emma's spirit appeared behind a crimson curtain, her figure huddled with a torn pregnant belly, blood dripping onto the cold tiled floor, the thick smell of blood like smoke haunting a derelict house. She approached, gripped Ryan's shoulders, whispering, "You ran from it in the rain, now run towards it in this darkness." A door appeared at the end of the room, emitting a flickering light like a delivery room lamp. Ryan shivered and stepped through. Before his eyes was the sight of himself delivering himself, a tiny red-skinned baby, eyeless and mouthless, crawling out of the dark belly, its cries and gasps indistinguishable from his own. He collapsed, his ragged breaths echoing into a deathly symphony. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of needles, the bright lights of the delivery room thickened until Ryan's eyes stared wide in the cold white space of an unreal world. Had he returned to the living world? Or had he just been reborn, as the host of all injustices, as the father of a generation of nameless souls? Somewhere a child's voice resonated. "Daddy." The room closed. Reality dissolved, opening the threshold for the final conclusion of this tragic karmic cycle. Ryan woke up that morning in a house filled with boundless gray light, every object still as it was but covered in a thick, invisible layer of dust. He picked up his phone, scrolling through hurried messages. Not a single text, no one calling to check in, no more birthday reminders or holiday greetings from family. His inbox was empty, social media silent like a desert locked off from all return. He walked to the convenience store at the end of the street. Familiar faces that once nodded in greeting now were indifferent. Alien. The shopkeeper looked through him, called the next customer in line, as if Ryan were an unobservable atom. He spoke his voice into the mundane universe of commerce, but no gesture left a reaction on the reflective surface of the life around him. His heart cold, Ryan went to his parents' house. Standing outside, he rang the doorbell for a long time. Footsteps inside, but when the door opened, his parents called him by the name of a son who had died 2 decades ago. "Who are you? We don't have anyone by that name." Their eyes cold and sharp, closing off any hope of mending the last fragments. He slowly walked to the cemetery at the end of the street. On Emma's grave, a newly polished headstone simply read, "Emma Carter and child, family reunited, no one left to wait." On the line below, amidst decaying leaves and cold mountain wind, among the names of loved ones, the name Ryan was also etched, as if he had never left that unjust night, as if he had died with his own tragedy, remembered by no one anymore. Isolation covered all his senses. Ryan no longer belonged to anyone's memory. Not even as a tormented soul was he called by name in the mortal realm. Ryan walked step by step through the rows of graves covered in morning mist. Somewhere faint spirits dissolved into the air as relatives knelt by graves, placing flowers, caressing photos, lighting candles. The figures of the living wept while the dead found peace. Each sob was a way home, a next step in the cycle of reincarnation. He sat silently by his wife's grave, the sky gray and overcast. No one came, no flowers were placed, only himself huddled in the cold earth and the biting wind. As night fell, crying rose around the desolate cemetery, mingling with the wind, with the plants within his own mind. Was it the child who never made it to birth? Was it his own sobs echoing from another world? Or the lullaby of someone who once bore an injustice, and was now crying for the part of his soul forever estranged from pity? No pity, no calls, no identity. Ryan was just a faint shadow, struggling in a realm of longing that no one sought, no one needed. The haunting drew Ryan into a silent journey of atonement. He clutched a gift, an ultrasound image, approaching the house of the woman he had hit and killed years ago. That place was now a new home, its owners indifferent, no one knowing, no one aware of the tragic story that had once marked this land. The new owner's voice was casual. "There's no one here like you described." Ryan went to the church, seeking the old priest for confession, to reveal his sin. But the priest was busy with another ceremony, looking through Ryan, not answering the misplaced apology hanging on his lips. He left all his letters of atonement under the church gate, in the usual spot. The next morning the papers were shredded, torn as if bitten by hellfire. Wind blew the letter fragments into a blinding dust, leaving no trace. Every attempt to cling to salvation, Ryan realized forgiveness forgiveness doesn't come from rituals, nor from external efforts to compensate. Deep down, Ryan knew he couldn't forgive himself, couldn't save himself, not even as a dead soul. A full year spun by. The Nebraska sky again poured down heavy rain on the fateful day. Driving on the road that day, Ryan unconsciously found himself heading back to the old street. No wife, no pastries, no reminders. Only the radio repeating, "Today, those who still have family, please go home early." The car passed the old turn, wet cold tires rolling over fresh mud, streetlights blurred by water, all street names drawn by shadows. Even his hands on the wheel felt guided by someone, deliberately turning towards familiar directions. Without stopping anywhere, the car sped back to the exact spot where he had buried all his sins, all his obsessions a year ago, the spot where Emma had also stopped for the last time. In the slanted rain, Ryan saw the silhouette of a woman in a white coat standing by the roadside, leading a soaking wet child, its eyes wide, its thin lips moving as if whispering something, smiling as if groaning. Ryan stammered, hitting the brakes, but every movement was slowed to an unbearable degree. The curtain of rain fell, no longer separating reality from illusion, life from death. The last sound he heard was the child's intermittent laughter, blending with the sound of tires screeching on the road. No screams, no struggles, only belated release. Ryan was called back to the world he should have belonged to long ago, a barren piece of land on the outskirts of the cemetery, low grass covering it, no headstones, no fence. Wind whistled through a rusted baby cradle leaning askew on the muddy ground. By the roadside, a rotting pumpkin, its skin faintly sketched with mud into an indistinct face. No visitors, no prayers, no one calling the names of those who had lost their right to be human. A lullaby fell softly on the wind in the October afternoon, sounding like a lullaby for a child, sounding like a farewell to one's killer. No truth, no black and white, no benevolent light passing through the final door. All that remained was the idea of a karmic cycle that had closed. In that world, for those who are not brave enough to acknowledge themselves as human, their souls will forever have no refuge, forever forgotten in a world where no one pities, no one remembers.
One life could not be saved, another life never made it to birth, and the one who once ran away was finally chosen as the end of the curse. Do you believe in the retribution of unborn souls? Leave a comment below and share the video if this story makes your heart heavy. See you again on Whisper Horror Channel, where dreams are not just dreams, but where blood debts are fully collected.